Welcome. This is a portion of a 2 hour conversation that took place in June of 2019 after the NRA national meetings. A conversation about NRA with Mac from Military Arms Channel, Jeff Knox from Firearms Coalition, Rob Pincus from ICE and 2AO, Shawn from We Like Shooting, and Jared from Guns and Gadgets. Together, we talked about the current state of the NRA, where it's going, and what we can do. Links to each of the participants and the full 2 hour conversation are available below.
And also, let me rebut to Tim just a little bit here. And I do this with 100% respect because we are all on the same team, like everyone on this panel. We all know each other very clearly and have for a very long time. You talk about the litigation, and see, I see litigation as a failure of lobbying, and then I do think that the NRA is really the only game in town when it comes to lobbying. And for the people out there, lobbying is basically threatening politicians to do what we want in the way that we want them to do it. And they have the biggest stick in the room. Bottom line, like GOA, FPC, Second Amendment Foundation, I tried to figure out all the lobbying that they were doing. I've specifically talked to FPC, and he said, oh, mostly California, but we've branched out to about 4 states when I talked to him in January. And maybe it's a little bit more now. But I mean, the bottom line is, like, litigation is after everything else has failed. It's after our advocacy and our activism has failed. It's after our lobbying has failed. And that's all we're stuck with. And I use Colorado as the greatest example of that ever. July 1st, 2013, we lost the right to any magazines over 15 rounds. But we recalled the head of the Senate. We recalled another senator that was responsible for this. We did all these things. We did so much activism. We did so much lobbying. We still failed. And the litigation has been fruitless and useless in Colorado. Maybe I was reading today that we'll see something in the future, but if we lose that lobbying, that's what I worry about. And if we lose the ability to lobby and the ability to take these corrupt politicians out to the fancy dinners and do the things that we need to do to win them over to our side, that's what I worry about. And again, I mean, like, Tim, you are not wrong by any means. Like, I understand what you're saying and your strategy, but I also think that it's risky, and I am stuck in between a little bit of the two. Rob?
I don't think there's find me the politician that has been lobbied into a pro-gun position for, you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't exist. I don't believe the NRA has done lobbying for a long time. I don't think that they have spent money. When I look, originally, like, lobbying literally was people in the lobby of the hotel that Ulysses S. Grant, when he was president of, would try to get his attention as he came out of the hotel and try to coerce him or educate him or bring him into their perspective on an issue. That's the term lobbying, is where it comes from. I don't think the NRA has been an advocate. I don't think they've reached out. I don't think they've tried to grow our ranks. They may have tried to grow their memberships, especially in election years, but they have not really tried to grow the ranks of American gun owners in a long, long time. And I think that's really clear in their messaging. I think it's clear in the way they sort. I was at one of the things with Walk the Talk America with the mental health community, where we were representing the gun community, and talked to them. And one of the Democrat guys from Maryland raised his hand and said, the NRA worked with me on writing the ERPO law. They sat there and worked with us. We helped them, get some of their interest with the penalties and things like that for false reports into it. We worked with the NRA guys, and then they gave me a D rating, because I guess D for Democrat. Like, he kind of said it ironically, but the guy really felt bad. He felt like he had worked with the NRA and tried to show, like, best foot forward, but clearly he wasn't going to get anything but, a low score because he was a Democrat. And I think that's the problem, is the identity politics have taken over, and the fundraising goal has taken over from the lobbying. I look at organizations like Illinois State Rifle Association would probably be a great example, where they have full-time lobbyists who spend time in Springfield, Illinois, obviously Illinois being one of the front lines of the gun rights fight in America. That there's a lot of these state organizations that at the state level do great work. I was just in Pittsburgh. A lot of us were in Pittsburgh for the USCCA Expo, and I was just there, and I actually spoke at one of the meetings for the Allegheny County Sportsman's League and FOAC, Firearms Owners Against Crime, who are fighting a great fight against the state of Pennsylvania and specifically against Pittsburgh, because if Pittsburgh wins, it's a preemption challenge that could then spread like wildfire across the country. So that local fight's really important too. I hear a lot of people, California Rifle and Pistol Association might be the best example. They're essentially a front for the NRA in California, but they do good work in California. They try to do as much good work as they can, right along with Firearms Policy Coalition. And what I think is important is to realize you don't have to send your money to Fairfax and have 50 cents taken for luxury lifestyle travel and then have 50 cents go back to California. If you're in California, support the state organization directly, and you're still going to get the lobbying at the state level. You're still going to get the campaigning at the state level, people talk about youth programs. Okay, give the money to the youth program instead of waiting for it to filter back through a Friends of the NRA banquet. And people will tell me, well, if I give to the foundation or I give the Friends of the NRA, it's different from paying the salaries at the NRA. It's really not. So much of that money gets, quote unquote, filtered through the people that run it, who are on staff. They're out of Fairfax. The people that obviously are donating to the NRA to support the NRA, they're donating to the NRA, and then some of those guns and things go to the Friends of the NRA banquets. So we really have to be careful about talking about the good that the NRA does, when what we really need to do is think about how we can do that same good without them for now and maybe forever.
Well, and where I would go with this is, if you are really concerned about the lobbying efforts of NRA, and they're out there. I think that the biggest threats are coming from the states right now. The Giffords and the Bloombergs have moved into the states heavily, and it's mostly about election politics. But if you want to give to NRA ILA, that is different from giving to NRA General. And you can continue to support NRA's direct lobbying efforts by earmarking it to ILA. Be sure that you're careful about what envelope it's in. They might abscond with it. They might slide it over into a different fund. They've been accused of doing that in the past with election contributions, which is a real big no-no. But what I would recommend people do is start out by supporting your state grassroots organization. Send the money to the state grassroots organization, number one. Then if you've got something left over, well, send it out to your favorite national organization. If that's NRA ILA, okay, so be it. Personally, I wouldn't, but that's me. One of the other things here, as far as where we can go, what we can do, there are effective grassroots organizations in almost every state. And there are pretty good organizations in the rest of them. There are some charlatans out there. Be careful, watch out for them. But for instance, my organization, I routinely work with about 35 different state organizations. And I apologize, Pete, I haven't gotten you any lists, and I've meant to do that. But when something big like the Sandy Hook happened, and we had Manchin Toomey threatening, and NRA was waffling, or we were afraid that NRA was waffling. At that time, we put together a letter, and we had the leaders of 35 to 40 state organizations representing anywhere from 5,000 to 20,000 members in each of those states. And that letter went to Congress under all of their signatures, and expressed that this is how many people we have backing us. And the power, my dad always said that the only attribute that a politician needs to have to be successful is the ability to be elected. That's it. Because a successful politician is, by definition, one that gets elected. It's not what he accomplishes while he's in there. It's that he gets elected. That's success to a politician. And if you can impact their ability to be elected, that's what really matters. So get involved at the state level and make sure that the politicians that you're sending to Washington understand that, number one, they have to be pro-rights in order to get elected. And if they do something stupid once they get in there, or don't do what we've asked them to do and elected them to do, that they won't get elected again. And that's what it all boils down to, really.
This is a portion of a 2-hour conversation that took place in June of 2019 after the NRA national meetings. A conversation about NRA with Mac from Military Arms Channel, Jeff Knox from Firearms Coalition, Rob Pincus from I.C.E. and 2AO, Shawn from We Like Shooting, and Jared from Guns and Gadgets. Together, we talked about the current state of the NRA, where it's going, and what we can do. Links to each of the participants and the full 2-hour conversation are available below.